Today, we're going to talk about, do you want to open him up emotionally? I want you to try this. With all the talk of emotionally unavailable men, emotionally constipated men, fearful avoidant men, dismissive avoidant men, oftentimes women are seeking a deeper, closer connection to a man, and they struggle actually knowing what to do to get a man to open up. See, sadly, most men have been taught at a very young age, particularly if they are a tail end baby boomer or a Gen Xer man. Oftentimes, we were taught to stuff our emotions, stuff our feelings. To be a man required being radically stoic and never sharing how you feel about things. And certainly, this seems in conflict the way our current dating environment works, where a man might openly express all of these gigantic feelings towards you when he is driven by lust or limerence, and then all of a sudden become absolutely quiet once the two of you have been physically intimate. And I think part of the problem in our current dating environment is that most couples are experiencing a casual relationship. Let me repeat that, a casual relationship. Why is it casual? Because many people, particularly those in midlife, and I always say midlife is after baby making years and before retirement, roughly 75% of singles in that demographic are divorced. And because of divorce, we have a lot of people, both men and women alike, who are gun shy to commitment. Let me repeat that, they're gun shy to commitment. And because of this, because people are no longer entering into the process with some sort of intentionality, with some sort of plan, with some sort of perception of the future, people are just living in the moment. And when they're living in the moment, they're oftentimes not seeing the bigger picture of a container of a relationship. In fact, if you've watched my YouTube channel lately, I've been advocating something I call, is he committed to commitment? Is he committed to commitment? And we'll talk about that a little bit more. See, I've noticed our current dating environment today is merely an extended version of friends with benefits. And what I mean to say is people are connecting, they're hooking up without building the deep roots of trust that can establish or maintain a healthy long-term relationship. Did you hear me say that? The deep roots of trust. Now, trust isn't just about fidelity. Trust is, can I count on this person to be there for me when I need them? Do they have my best interest at heart? And I think the only way to build deeper trust is through emotional intimacy. Through emotional intimacy. If you're not familiar with the book, um, Emotional Intimacy by Robert Masters. I highly recommend reading this book. It's rather thick, but it's worth it to you. And by the way, all the books I recommend are in the show notes at the link below. Why am I recommending this book? Because ladies, many of you actually don't know how to express yourself in a way that can be seen, heard, and understood, to actually be a facilitator for the two of you to open up emotionally. And I want to illustrate this by sharing with you an example from a TV show that ran some years ago called The Good Doctor. The Good Doctor. It's about a young man who's autistic, but he's also high functioning and or is he Asperger's? I forget. Is he autistic or Asperger's? Now I forget. Well, I'm sure he's on the spectrum. Excuse me. Let's just say that he's on the spectrum. He had social awkwardness, and yet he was very high functioning, which allowed him to go to medical school and become a doctor. But he doesn't have a very good bedside manner, nor does he know how to express his emotions in a way that can be seen, heard, and understood. In fact, there are plenty of circumstances where he's highly sensitive to things. And I want to illustrate this point because as you're watching the show, most of us have a great deal of empathy for what he's going through because he has a neurological condition that makes it rather difficult. Well, guess what? Most men have been subjected to a lot of neurological challenges. And I mean by what I mean by neurological, by programming that makes it very difficult for men to open up, just like this character in this show, The Good Doctor. And he's very much like an emotional child. And so I'm going to share some things in a few moments that's going to illustrate how to actually do what was done on the show. Because as this person evolves over time, he's capable of opening up more and more. And I'm also going to share about a dear friend of mine whose husband is one of those radically stoic men who keeps his feelings bottled up. And she's thirsty for connection. She's thirsty for some sort of from emoting from him. And much of what I'm going to share is what she practiced as well. So when I say try this, there's seven things I'm going to invite you to try. Try these 7 things, okay? Number 1, set an example by being open yourself. Set an example by being open yourself. Now, let me be clear. This isn't about compromising yourself. This isn't about being a doormat. In fact, I'm going to invite you to take a section from my page, my book called What the Heck is Self-Love Anyway? A Journey of Personal Development, Self-Help, and Spiritual Work. Again, there's a link to get a copy of all the books I recommend. Chapter 1 is Speak Your Truth, Do It with Kindness. See, oftentimes we don't know what our truth is. Now, what I believe is our truth is a recognition of our fears, our insecurities, our doubts, our judgments, our negative patterns, our limiting beliefs. This is what our truth is that's what's actually going on underneath. But to be able to evaluate and assess that truth and then be able to articulate it in a way that you can be seen, heard, and understood. Within our truth are our needs. So you set an example by expressing a need you would like your partner to fill. I have a need for closeness. And within closeness, I have a need for being able to share our feelings openly with each other. And if someone says they struggle with that, then simply lead by example. Set an example as being as open as possible. And let me just say this, if you have a fear around this, which many women actually wear duct tape. Oops, please forgive me, the duct tape fell. They wear duct tape, meaning, I don't mean that, certainly many of you have had certain circumstances that's caused you to be fearful of opening up. But if you can take another chapter from my book, and what I mean by rip off the duct tape, I simply mean, if it's sincere and from the heart, you can't say the wrong thing to the right person. And that's my invitation for you. Number 2, to get a man to open up. Don't force the relationship. Make a mutual investment. If he invests in the relationship, you invest in the relationship. If you invest in the relationship, he should invest. And I don't mean financial investment. I'm talking about investing your heart, okay? It should feel like a nice game of ping pong, but if you're trying to force your feelings upon him, it will most likely backfire and oftentimes cause him to close up, wall up. There's a certain pacing to expressing oneself. That's why I recommend reading these books. And if you need some additional support, this is a book I highly recommend getting, Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Nonviolent Communication by Marshall. It should have been titled Compassionate Communication. Do you realize that couples always say to me, women always say to me, Jonathan, communication is so important. But you know, a lot of people communicate like this. Wah, 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 wah. In other words, the other person can't hear you because oftentimes we vomit in the form of communication and not coming from a sincere, heartfelt place where the other person can see, hear, and understand you. I know you want to be seen, heard, and understood, but it also requires delivering from a place. Number 3, ask questions using feeling statements. Start using feeling words. If you're not familiar with feeling words, here, I'm going to pull out this list. Please forgive me. By the way, Google the Hoffman Processed Feelings List. Hoffman Processed Feelings List. Okay? Hoffman Processed Feelings List. Can someone post that? centered, content, fulfilled, patient, amazed, adventurous, moody, grouchy, furious, engaged, depressed, afraid, anxious, incapable, encouraged. These are all a variety of different feeling words. And do you realize very few of us actually use the abundance of words to describe what we're actually feeling? If you want a person to lean into their feelings, to open up emotionally, then start using words, start using language that actually is more, is that inspires deeper connection to our heart. How'd you feel about today? Instead of what did you do today, how did you feel about today? What feelings came up for you today? I'm here to encourage actually diving into feelings. But Jonathon, all the other coaches say don't talk to men about their feelings. Folks, we're in a different place in society. We don't need men to be your provider protectors anymore. And men don't need you to be the nurturers. What we're here to explore is a juicy, delicious, healthy, happy relationship where you're actually connecting with each other from a heart-centered level, or at least that's my invitation for you. Now, the fourth thing, I read this in an article. It said, talk to your guy while you're in the car. Talk to your guy while you're in the car. Thought this was interesting, but you have a captive audience at this point. Okay. But some of you are going to say, but Jonathon, I'm in a long distance relationship. All we do is talk on the phone all day long. We just talk on the phone. We text and text and text. Folks, if you want a significant relationship, it requires being face to face. It requires to experience life from the actual visceral perspective, not the telephonic perspective, not the text messaging perspective. Now, number 5, this relates to the good doctor. You have to take his personality into account. By the way, in this TV show, everybody knew his weakness. Instead of judging him, instead of criticizing him, instead of making him out to be bad or wrong, they understand that this was a struggle for him. People like engineers, nerds, doctors oftentimes struggle because they're in their head all the time. And certainly someone who's in a blue-collar profession is in his body all the time. Very few people are actually in their heart all the time. And I invite you to recognize that you have to kind of know your audience, so to speak. Take his personality into consideration. Because your wishful think, by the way, criticizing him, judging him, making all men out to be bad is setting yourself up for failure. If you have a good man with a good heart, you actually can open him up emotionally, particularly like I said in the beginning of this conversation, when you set an example. I have one of my dearest friends, one of the most stoic men I know, and he was in a relationship with a woman who constantly bombarded him with her feelings. Now, I'm going to be candid with you, that relationship didn't work out because she was almost to the point of a toxic way of doing it. But you know what was the byproduct of this? He actually, through this bombardment, now mind you, it was toxic, it actually taught him to connect with his own feelings. And now he's in a new relationship. He's engaged to be married. He's my age. We're dear friends with one another. Because the woman set an example. Now, please don't set a toxic example, because that's not going to work in your favor. Certainly, as I said earlier, if it's sincere and from the heart, that's what matters most. Now, I said this earlier, talking in the car, but we're going to also suggest actually having deeper conversations while you're doing things together, like social activities, hobbies, mutual interest, spending time with family and friends. I remember once I was on a date with a woman. Our second date was at Disneyland. And if you've ever been to an amusement park like a Disneyland, you can spend hours in line. What was interesting about this, while we were doing so, we were actually connecting with each other at a heart-centered level, because we talked to one another without the romantic pretense. It was Disneyland. It was about having fun. When you take out the romantic pretense and focus on what you're actually doing, whether it's social activities, hobbies, mutual interest, make sure you're doing things together. And I'm only reiterating this for all of you that are stuck in some sort of fantasy land that your long distance relationship is so meaningful and so powerful, but you've only seen each other once in 6 months. And lastly, number 7, give them room to practice. Give them room to practice. You know, a lot of women expect men. It's as if you do the following. You went out to your backyard, you had an apple tree seed and you planted in the backyard and you water a little bit and you went to bed and you woke up the next morning going, "Where's my apple tree?" Give men room to practice. I invite you to look at couples workshops together. They're very powerful. There are tons of them right in your area, things you can do together that's outside of the entertainment of one another. We are so hyper focused, especially in the early phase of dating, of just entertaining one another, that we're not actually connecting with one another at a genuine heart-centered level. But most importantly, if you plant that seed, give it time to grow or germinate, give it time to grow. Just remember, when you have a good person in front of you, that's hard enough as it is. Be patient with that person. And as I said, I'm going to repeat myself over and over again. Set an example. Be the example. Be as open as possible, because that could create a relationship that is far remarkable than you've ever experienced before. Is this sinking in? Is this resonating with you? Please let me know if it is. Post a comment below. I'd like to hear your thoughts. As always, if you find value in my videos, please hit that like button. Please share this video. Please subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so you can be notified of new videos. And if you want to connect with me directly, hey, there's links below to schedule a discovery call, to join my group called Midlife Love Mastery, to follow me on Instagram, to get my dating vows, to get all the books I recommend are listed below. All right, I'm going to wrap up this video as I always do. First off, give myself a big, gigantic Jonathon Barrick of self-love. I'm going to reach into the camera and give you a hug of love if that's okay. I'm asking you to turn to someone, a pet, a teddy bear, a pillow. Give it or them a hug of love, because hugs are a great source of love. And let's face it, we could all use more love in our lives. Thanks a bunch. Bye now. Bye-bye.